I think a lot of my ideas about sustainability in the teaching of art history originated first from the sticker shock I had as an undergraduate when I bought my first art history textbook. And I think even back in the late 80s, I started college in 89. I believe the textbook was already over $100 to get a Jansen's History of Art. And today, a hardcover volume that would cover, the whole of art history from the Western perspective is probably about $125 to $150. If you're looking at world art, it might even be more. E-textbooks are cutting the cost a bit, but then the student is only sort of renting that, and then the textbook access expires. And of course, we have here at Penn State high tuition and students who are often making the choice between materials and things like their utility bills and rent. So a lot of this is coming from that kind of background. So what I've done is I have eliminated the textbook in all of my classes, but this is something that comes with consequences. One of which is the lack of images. When you buy a big art history textbook, it has an amazing database of images. Sometimes a CD-ROM is included in that so that you have an image pack, or there are electronic resources that allow for virtual or physically printed flashcards and so on. And then you also have a glossary in it. And you can make up for that to some degree by using a tool like ArtStore, where a professor can create image sets and make those available to students. Unfortunately, though, now ArtStore is going through major changes. They've been acquired by Ithaca, and a lot of the features that used to make it a good platform either have disappeared or are on their way out. So I also, for my students, create visual note-taking guides for each of their lessons. I tend to teach survey courses, so these are the 100 level beginner courses. And in those, I noticed over and over my online students in particular, who are mostly returning adult students, they felt overwhelmed by the material. They had no idea what should be in their notes. And so I started creating note-taking guides that had thumbnail images in them, just sort of setting these up in a simple HTML format table, and then creating downloadable PDFs for the students that they could use. And since they're in PDF format and the images have been taken down to a very small size, we're not in a copyright issue with these sorts of things. I also have put together a bunch of oops, I'm sorry, my mouse is on its way out here. I've also created glossaries, because that's the other major advantage of having a textbook. So I have glossaries for each major lesson. And then what I'm doing to make up for the lack of readings is I'm using pre-existing open educational resource material. I primarily use the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Timeline of Art History website, which has a series of really extremely well-written short essays that provide sort of contextual introductions to most of the lessons. And then occasionally, especially when there's an exhibition on something, there will be more of a deep dive in that material if I choose to use it. So I've been able to really replace my textbook. And the last kind of major component I've been making available to all of my students is I'm making diagrams for them. So Doric architecture. I have a walking tour of Penn State with my own photographs so that they can see major architectural elements that we talk about in historic works, but in the Penn State environment. So I send them, for example, to Petit Library to see barrel vaulting and coffering. In Borland, I point out where they can find pilasters and blind arcading and things like that. There's some wonderful examples just sort of in the neighborhood of Borland, as you know. And then I've also been, particularly during COVID, making short video demos. So this is just a screenshot from Cultura of a demo of a peplos, which is an ancient Greek garment associated primarily with Athena and sometimes also with Artemis. And this is a family affair. My then 11-year-old was shooting the video while I dressed my husband up in this female garment, just using a king-size sheet, a couple of big chunky art clips like you would use to put paper onto a board, and then a long ribbon. So my students really liked that one. They watched it actually for yesterday's lecture, the class that I'm teaching right now. I also have had my mother, who is a silversmith, demonstrate chase repoussé techniques and some casting. I have a colleague, Dave Meredith, who gave a talk on something that I'll show you in a moment. So all of this is meant to make the material more accessible for the students, but give them quality information that they don't have to pay for. And going forward, I'm planning on actually having a textbook, working with the libraries and incorporating all of this into an Art History 111 textbook, and then eventually an Art History 112 textbook as well. The other thing that I've done with open educational resources is I participated during COVID in a group called Redesigning Modernities. This is something that was spearheaded by the College of Liberal Arts, and particularly by comparative literature. And we all participated in these very lengthy seminars that looked at the concept of modernism from sort of non-Western lenses. We were looking particularly at India and what modernism means in India. But then in breakout groups, and this is where I found it to be most inspiring, we discussed sort of modernism and its consequences. So problems of infrastructure, problems of resource exploitation, resources including people. And so the product that was expected of the fellows who participated in this was the creation of one or more open educational resource modules that could be then posted to a public site and modeled for people. And so I created four. I created one on ochre. I collaborated with two colleagues, Sarah Jo Thompson, who is here at Penn State, and David Meredith, who just retired from Penn State Fayette, one on lapis lazuli, and then one called Modernism's Monsters with my friend Catherine Jolivet, who teaches at Southwest Missouri State. And in David Meredith he's a metallurgist, and so he gave us sort of a metallurgical history of gold and gold mining, and a look at the very real consequences of mining gold. Let me stop my share, and if there's time, do I have a couple minutes left? I can walk you through, let's see, need to find it here. Let me get to the right tab. Here we go. I'll get you to the module. Is everyone seeing that? So here, let me. Oh, this is going to take a while, unfortunately. Okay. Well, what I did, and I can give everyone access to this site, what we actually want to do is look at the modules area, is I can give everyone access to this Canvas site I put together. If you just email me, it's hcm1@psu.edu, but you can see each one of these modules, and these have now been captured by a grad student in the comparative literature department and put onto a site where anyone has access to them. So I have an ochre module. This is based on research I did when I was creating my Art History 107 Rocks, Minerals, and the History of Art course with my geosciences colleague, Maureen Feynman. And we have a section on ochre pigment and environmentalism. Here's the gold module with Sarah Jo. So I did the first part, kind of ancient through medieval. And here's the video with my mom demonstrating Chase Repoussé. There's discussions of ancient and medieval gold with early writers pointing out the difficulties of dealing with gold and the dangers of mining. And then Sarah Jo is particularly involved in research in the Amazon. And so she was looking at the consequences of gold mining there on the environment. Here's the unit on lapis lazuli. And then with modernism's monsters, this is all of the sort of technology and popular culture nightmares. So I did kind of a bit of a dive into monster movies and the imaginations in monster movies based on real disasters like the Fukuro Maru being caught up in a nuclear test and so on. So that's kind of what I've been working on. It's a bunch of different directions, but I think you can probably see a coherent theme.